1.4 million households. That is the terrible number that Samba TV says is the number of people who tuned in to watch the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka on Disney+. Now, that would be bad enough that if it were a linear broadcast television show, they'd probably cancel it outright. But Disney could not have that number circulating for long. Oh no, much is riding on this show, including the future career of Dave Filoni, including the Mandoverse movie, and so much more. And so Disney put out a much, much bigger number, and we're here to say, folks, that it is time for Star Wars Ratings War. And we'll review the latest episode, too. And folks, we are back with another video of excellence here on the WDW Pro channel as we endeavor to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. In this case, we are analyzing a situation and a new episode regarding Ahsoka, the Star Wars series, which is destined to set the course for Dave Filoni and for Thrawn and for whatever else comes out of the Mandoverse. Joining us, as always, to discuss Star Wars at a high level, Lauren Connor of ThatParkPlace.com, and Jonas J. Campbell just could not help himself. He wanted in on this one as well, and so we said, Jonas, get on in here. The water is fine. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Yep, thanks for having us.
You know, I thought I was a big Star Wars fan when I started working for That Park Place, but in the case of Lauren Connor, there is always a bigger fish.
Well, except that for Lauren, there may not be another fish that's bigger. So Lauren may be the apex predator when it comes to Star Wars knowledge. Well, one thing that is very interesting going on, folks, beyond just this 3rd episode that landed, happens to be the drama surrounding the ratings for Ahsoka. And I'm here to tell you that Disney has a massive vested interest in trying to get ahead of this narrative. So let's find out what happened. This coming from Bounding Into Comics. John Trent, the writer of this one, been on the show many times. Ahsoka has abysmal viewership, one of the worst Star Wars Disney Plus premieres since The Mandalorian Season 1. It says the newly released Ahsoka series reportedly had one of the worst Disney Plus premieres for a Star Wars series since The Mandalorian Season 1. Samba TV recently shared their data claiming that only 1.2 million U.S. households tuned into Ahsoka in its first 6 days since release. The data analysis group reported on X. The latest new Star Wars series, Ahsoka, finally hit screens with 1.2 million U.S. households watching over its first 6 days. This is similar to viewership of Andor's premiere season, and slightly lower than The Mandalorian's 3rd season premiere over its first 6 days. Now, that was keyed in by Valiant Renegade. He figured out that, we're comparing 5 days to 6 days. So we had some clarifications made online via Twitter, in which Samba TV was actually responding to both Valiant Renegade and myself. And we also had a report out of Deadline from Samba TV. Let's take a look at that now. This by Anthony D'Alessandro. Ahsoka first episode clocks 14 million views worldwide on Disney Plus per studio. Now, how in the world did that happen? Well, if we go down here, we're going to start in the middle. Samba TV reports that live plus 5 day viewership for the first episode of Disney Plus Lucasfilm's new series Ahsoka drew 1.2 million household. There, it's been brought down to the 5-day viewership. And that put it in line with Andor. Now, the interesting thing, gentlemen, is that Samba TV has in its clientele the Walt Disney Company. So Samba TV is not in the business of making Disney look bad. In fact, in the past, we have often wondered why Samba TV reports some things about Disney in the way that they do. And I say that with a wink and a nod. We sort of have an idea, an inkling of why they do that. And it's to put Disney in a positive light, perhaps. In this case, though, very rapidly, Disney had their own statistic that they put out which counters Samba TV. And I'll say this, folks, if you watched the video from yesterday afternoon, Script Doctor was on, and he said, as we were looking at this data for the first time, it was so bad that if this were a show on linear broadcast television, they would immediately cancel it because of the low viewership. Now, Disney can't have that. Disney can't have their launching into the Thrawn series and future movies and all of that be this bad. And so Disney puts out this number, 14 million views. Whew. Now, let's read what it says, and then I'll explain this a little bit. Disney, which doesn't always shout out their viewership figures for Disney Plus, i.e. they never do, is letting everyone know that the first episode of Ahsoka clocked 14 million views, making the series #1 worldwide on the streaming platform. Hands down, per the studio, it's the most watched title on Disney Plus this past week. All right, here's the tricky part about this, and this even got a statement supposedly out of Kathleen Kennedy, likely with her stamp on someone out of marketing. But here's the deal: these two numbers cannot coexist and be accurate. It just can't happen. Samba TV reporting, of course, 1.4 million households, and Disney reporting 14 million views. So if you were to take that face value and say that they're both accurate, that would mean that on average, each household has 10 members in the family watching this. So that just doesn't work. Now, we know how Samba TV works. We know that they measure based on the first 5 minutes of viewership consecutively, and that's what gets it to be counted as a household view. We also know that Samba TV, going into the weeds here, folks, and I do apologize that Lauren and Jonas aren't in yet, but let's set this up. Samba TV, the way they work is they have their software, their code on a great number of smart televisions across the United States, something like 28% of them. And it lets them know when people are watching things. They then extrapolate that data out to determine what would the numbers be if every device were being viewed in that way as a percentage. And then they give us a number. Nielsen does not work that way. Nielsen looks at the total minutes watched of a show, and they don't pay attention to who watched it. They just pay attention to how much it was watched, period. And they do that through Nielsen families who report on what their devices were showing and for how long. Now, the Disney number, this is what gets interesting. We have no idea whatsoever what the Disney statistic means. We have no rubric. We have no measurements. We have no parameters. Does it count if somebody watches the show for 5 minutes, pauses it, comes back, clicks play again? Does that count as 2 or does it count as 1? Is Disney assuming that one person is always watching, or is Disney multiplying this by a factor of 4 and saying, well, per household, we believe there are 4 people, behind the TV watching it? We have no idea. We have no idea how Disney is getting this number. The one thing we do know, gentlemen, is that Samba TV, for all of its flaws that we think that it has, and for all of its goodness that it has too, but Samba TV is putting this in the realm of Andor. We know that Andor was not a success. And so I want to start with Lorne. Lorne, what do you make of the idea that Ahsoka, after all of this drama and Disney trying to get ahead of it, we believe that it at least opened in the same realm of Andor? Do you think that perhaps the 3rd episode is going to bail out that situation, or do you think that's do you think it's dead out of the gate perhaps?
I don't think we'll know until the series actually completes, because I think you may have a certain number of people that wait until the series is complete so they can binge it back to back. Some people don't like to wait week to week for each episode, and they may be waiting to hear word of mouth from people that they trust as well. So I wouldn't feel confident in predicting how this is going to do until the series is done.
What do you make of just how difficult it is to figure out the data here, Lauren? I mean, who do we believe in all of this?
Well, I don't know that you can really reliably attach anything to what Disney is saying, because, as you said, we don't know anything about how they're figuring out their own metrics. I do like the fact that when you were engaging with Samba today and VR was engaging with them, you actually, they asked, well, what metric do you want? And you gave them a number and they responded. And I think that worked in their favor for me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that actually boosts my confidence in what they're saying a little bit. I think Nielsen probably has the most accurate way to rate overall, because they're paying attention to what's the total minutes streamed, and that, I think, captures audience interest better than, say, well, they watched 5 minutes of it. But Samba at least gave us something concrete to latch onto that let us kind of compare apples to apples. So I think that that's probably where you ought to be focusing the attention, because that's where we have the most information.
So, Jonas, this may be, an act in, nonsense, perhaps, because we don't know what the numbers are. But I went ahead and extrapolated out. If you did just the Samba TV numbers, if you just held them at face value, which is 1.2 million households, and then you said, okay, on average, let's say there are 3 people attached to that. And then you said, all right, what's the full runtime of the first 2 episodes? And I ran all of these numbers, and what I came out with was that this lands somewhere in the realm of about 140 million minutes watched in the best case scenario, based on Samba TV. Disney, if Disney's accurate, totally different ballgame, and it's actually crazy numbers then. So I don't believe them, by the way. But the Samba TV numbers would put it at somewhere around 140 million minutes streamed, if we were trying to extrapolate this into Nielsen. That would put it at a 9th of the viewership of Bluey. So I think that's why Disney tried to get out ahead of this narrative, and they needed to shape it in their own way. Disney's never done this before, by the way, release these kinds of numbers. They've talked about stuff being the number 1 or the number 2, but this kind of specificity, I don't think we've ever seen.
That wouldn't put it on the top 10. I'll say that. And it wouldn't even, if it were a movie, it wouldn't even make it to the top 10 movie chart for the most recent Nielsen week that we have, which is July 24th to the 30th. The lowest on that one right now is The Outlaws, which is 169 million minutes watched. Or
didn't Andor struggle to stay on Nielsen?
You know, I don't remember any conversation about Andor on Nielsen, honestly.
I think it really had a hard time even getting on the chart. So if they're in the same ballpark, that adds up very well.
So let's just put this, let's not talk Bluey, because Bluey is the 2nd largest show in streaming some weeks.
Right. Bluey, by the way, 1 billion minutes watched in the latest Nielsen ratings, and Suits, which is the number 1 show, triples Bluey's ratings. So,
yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's a juggernaut, and it would be unfair to compare it. But Encanto, or Encanto, if you like to say it with the more appropriate accent, that's 186 million watch minutes in a week, and that beats your guess, your estimate, your educated guess, your hypothesis for Ahsoka.
I think it will be higher. I mean, I honestly think it'll be higher, because surely this number lands somewhere in between these two statistics. I tend to lean that it's going to be much closer to Samba TV, simply because the Disney Plus numbers are a little silly. Now, that said, if you look at the fact that Disney Plus has 156 million subscribers, okay, those are accounts, and attached to those accounts are various people. Again, let's say there's 3 people behind each account on average, families, you know, using this. You get something like 450 million people that potentially could watch something. So even Disney's numbers would put this at a statistically very low participation rate in terms of people tuning in to watch Ahsoka. So even on the high end of Disney, it still, I don't think, looks very good. But let's leave all that there. There is a war going on right now. Disney trying to form this narrative around Ahsoka. We'll see how this plays out on Nielsen. That is going to be fascinating. We won't have those numbers for another 4 to 5 weeks.
I'm just going to guess right now. Call me on it. Call me on it in 4 to 5 weeks. I'm just going to guess 400 watch minutes, million watch minutes.
That's about what I would think. 350 to 400, I'll say. Lauren, you want to make a guess, a stab on it?
No, this is more your guys' area of expertise. I don't really pay attention when it comes to this kind of stuff. So
let's get into your area. Let's get into your area of expertise, Lauren. And we've just, all 3 of us, we've just watched the 3rd episode. I'm going to hold my opinions about it. Lauren, I'm going to give you the floor. I know you want to give some clarifications also in regards to a video from last week. So, Lauren, it's yours. Take it away.
Right. So there were a couple of opinions that I offered last week on the first 2 episodes that I wanted to come back and actually make some corrections because people had mentioned some things in the comments of that first video that I had missed a couple of things in the first couple of episodes. And the audience also changed my opinion about something that I thought was important to address. So the first thing is about the map. And the nature of how it's working in the show. And they actually addressed that in this week's episode. I had missed the markings on the map as it was in its holographic form showing the Purrgil. And so they did make a clarification in this week's episode that the map that is found on that Night Sister world is tracking the migratory patterns of the Purrgil. So they're not using it directly to track Thrawn. They're using it to figure out where the Purrgil migrate to, and then extrapolating from that, that's where they took Thrawn. And so that makes more sense. I think it still leaves open the question of why was a Night Sister tribe tracking the migratory patterns of the Purrgil? But I think they actually answer that question in this episode as well. When Morgan Elsbeth is talking about that ancient race that was coming from the pathway to Per Diem, I think it was called. I don't remember exactly what it was called.
Per Diem, huh?
Yeah. She was that's probably wrong, but it starts with a P. I know that. she's making it sound as though the Night Sisters came to the Star Wars galaxy from there. And so this is actually a pathway to wherever they originally came from. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, which is what the audience actually changed my mind on, was I made...
Whoa, wait a minute, Lauren. You're telling me that our splendid, high intellect, intensely wise audience changed your mind on Star Wars?
On a particular aspect, yep, absolutely. And a lot of it is because when you have all of these different series and they have come out at different times, and Star Wars has always leapfrogged all over the place chronologically, sometimes it's difficult to keep in mind the order in which certain things happen. Now, this is one of those things where that shouldn't have been an issue for me, because it's pretty obvious where in the timeline things are taking place. But I was not thinking about something the way that I should have been, and that has to do with the attitude of Ahsoka and her stoicness. And somebody made a really good point that I really wasn't thinking about. I was talking about how Ahsoka always had a certain spunk about her. There was an attitude of playfulness about her, and I felt that was completely missing in Rosario Dawson's performance. Part of the reason I was having a problem with this is that I could never picture Rosario Dawson calling anybody Sky Guy. It just didn't. Somehow I could never get from point A to point B there with her somehow calling Anakin Sky Guy. It just didn't work for me. But when you think about the actual chronology, she did start becoming much more serious in Rebels, and Rebels came out before season 7 of the Clone Wars. And the really important thing that you see there in season 7 is the very ending, when she leaves her lightsabers behind with the crashed Star Destroyer. Vader later finds them. She has to bury all of her troops. And it's after that that her entire demeanor changes. You could imagine this would change a person. But because that came after I saw Rebels, I wasn't quite putting the chronology right and understanding that this is really the event that changed her. And so the audience is right about that. I can understand why that transition takes place. I just wasn't looking at it the proper way. So kudos to the audience on that.
Well, speaking of the audience, Lauren, there's an interesting thing going on with this Ahsoka show. I want to show you guys this. I've run this poll both on X and on YouTube, and they're fairly similar. We've got leading into about 6,000 votes. So 5.6 thousand by the time this video comes out. Probably get around 6,000 votes. Not bad, eh? But the audience out there, you all have selected this, and it looks to me like right now we've got 56% of the audience watching this video probably thinks that Ahsoka is poor. Now, they did not see the 3rd episode at the time this poll came out. And that means, of course, that about 44% of the audience out there thinks that Ahsoka is either average or good. Now, you know, not very many think it's great, but I think this is something worth taking into account as we go into this review. So everybody out there, no matter which side you are on, just know that this is rather, you know, it's not perfectly even, but it's getting close to approximating that half of you out there think it's okay or like it, and half of you don't. And so we have to be considerate of everybody, of course, as we're reviewing this. But Lauren, you've seen the 3rd episode now. In my opinion, it's very different than the first 2 episodes. Give us your thoughts on episode 3, please.
So this is kind of weird for me, because I have to give the caveat again. I have a bias. Everybody, I think, probably knows that. I am not subscribing to very much of Disney's Star Wars canon at all. There's very little that I would accept at this point. And so I made my feelings known about the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka. Generally, I was not impressed at all. What I would say about this episode is that I think it's 100% better than the first 2 episodes were. That doesn't mean that I would still accept this show in my own personal canon necessarily. I don't really see a way that I think that they could make that square with what I would need to happen for Star Wars to work. But if I'm taking it in a vacuum, if I'm looking at it on its own, the first thing that I would say is that the training that you see with Sabine and Ahsoka at the start of this episode, where she has her put on the face mask where she can't see, and they spar. And in a way, Ahsoka's almost teasing Sabine in a way. And one of the things that did make me cringe is that they had to repeat the line, well, how am I supposed to fight if I can't see? It's like, I wish
I cringe too.
I wish they wouldn't do that, but it was one line. I can live with one line.
Lauren, you know why it made me cringe? It made me cringe because they already, you can tell that they can't see. She knows she can't see. So when she puts it on, why does she say it again?
It's just a member berry. And
maybe they're assuming that the audience isn't familiar with this movie that it's referencing called Star Wars.
Yeah. But even so, I thought the sparring scene was good. And for a couple of reasons. One, you're actually showing some training, which they have been reluctant to do with their heroes. I think they have. I think all of the criticism about their characters being overpowered finally got under their skin. And that's why they're making such an effort to say that Sabine doesn't have any ability whatsoever. And they're showing that. But aside from the training scene, there's also the scene when Ahsoka is working with her to determine if she really has any force abilities whatsoever. And she's saying, look, put some effort into pulling this cup to you. And I thought it was a clever scene where you see Sabine trying to do it, and then she peeks. And that made me laugh because you could see the frustration, but it also points to the Jedi philosophy, which is that you cannot force the Force to do what you want it to do. To make it work, you have to be in balance, and you have to work with it in such a way that it will flow like water to where it's supposed to go. And I thought that is a good way to visualize or to visually show that philosophy. Also, they smiled in this episode. It actually looked like there were some people maybe accidentally starting to have some fun. We got some space battles. I still don't think that this is necessarily great Star Wars, but at least it's maybe starting to find its footing a little bit. I had fun with the episode. Do I think it's great? No. But I had fun with it, and that's better than what I could say for the last two episodes, which I thought were terrible.
Very good points. Jonas, one of the things that I find to still be problematic, and I think could be a major hindrance for the show, is I don't feel that there's any real tension that these characters could face a demise when they were in the space battle. I never thought that they were going to get shot down or destroyed. When they talked about that they had almost died, I didn't believe them. And I think that's different than the original Star Wars films, where when they're in space battles, you have, really angry screaming at one another because of, distrust, and there's real stakes on the line. They could die at any moment. But in this, it just kind of feels like we're going from point A to point B. No, I'm with Lauren. This was way better, and it was more fun. But I got to say, if you shoot the bad guys one time and their ship blows up, and you get 50 shots against you and not a dent, maybe some little Power Ranger style sparks take off in your cockpit, I'm losing the tension that I think is necessary to hold this thing together. Jonas, give us your thoughts on this third episode.
Well, to respond to that, how that problem is solved is by having a bunch of TIE fighters out there, as opposed to 3 Sith cruisers, or whatever you want to call the Sith equivalent of the Jedi cruisers. They did have the little golden metallic piece there to indicate there is some kind of force sensitivity in piloting those vehicles. To already go for the prequel reference there. I think that this was what a live action animated Star Wars show should be. It was fun, and Paul Cheto made that great comment on Twitter, which I tried to find it before we started, where he said you could probably skip the first 2 episodes and go straight for the third. I think that's probably going to end up being true. There's a lot of supposed exposition in those first 2 episodes that I think that they maybe are taking for granted, that maybe you could just go ahead and do like Star Wars did and let people try to figure out what's going on some level. That idea of a used future that you're dropping in, and maybe you don't know if that's a water bong sitting there. Maybe you don't know what's up with the Wolfman in the cantina. Maybe you don't know why it is that droids aren't allowed there.
You get 10 points for the Wolfman reference. Good Lord, man. What a great...
The Shistanavian Wolfman that I believe got cut out of the special editions.
How did you pronounce that?
Shistanavian? How is it pronounced?
I've always made a guess, but I always pronounce it Shistavinin.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I only read it in text for many years.
Those syllables, man, they can really throw you off.
The word Ewok has still not been mentioned in the main canon.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Ewok.
Could be. That would be Wookiee reversed, right?
That's right. It's good old Warwick Davis.
Probably mentioned in the Caravan of Courage or the Battle for Andor, and I'm just misremembering it here. Anyways, this episode did have somewhat of a sense of humor, not an amazing sense of humor. I feel like they're missing something with Hu Yang a little bit, although Hu Yang is actually funny. The robot character, voiced by David Tennant. They've gone a different direction here where they are actually seem to be trying to make him more robotic as opposed to making the robot seem more lifelike. I liked the training there until they got to the blindfold scene, which I thought to myself, well, this is just dumb. She's tapping her and she's walking around. She's not directly going after her. She's making no success whatsoever. I would have preferred to see some actual rage there, some voicing of frustration from this rebellious character. But this is me nitpicking a scene that I don't know what they're going for. I'm giving this episode a lot more of a benefit of the doubt because it seemed to be going somewhere. And you had that great little ominous moment at the end of Ray Stevenson's character. I feel like that would have been a great reveal of a villain in the end to know, oh no, there's another guy there. And by the way, he's huge compared to everyone else in the show who's a lady, even Marek. The problem, of course, now is Marek or whatever you want to pronounce the Arthurian wolf reference there, that guy that's in what appears to be a plastic French suit of armor painted black.
Okay, that I have to say, guys, that one was a problem. I mean, if you're going to fly a ship, you might want to take off the solid helmet.
Yeah. The fact that they are obviously disguising whoever's voice that is like, okay, this is not a spoiler. I don't know, but that's obviously Ezra Bridger. That is obviously someone we know. You don't think it's Ezra?
Lauren doesn't think it's such an obvious thing.
I think it's maybe a misdirect, but we'll see. You know, I'm open to the idea that it could be. I've heard all the rumors.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, Sam Witwer's in the credits, so maybe
that's where I'm going because
maybe it's Starkiller.
Yeah,
I don't know. That being said, there's a lot to answer for as far as the non-lethality of lightsabers if that ends up being Starkiller. Also, looks like Mon Mothma's doing well. She seems to have not aged a day since Andor.
Never do.
Which
the only thing that really should worry people in the Star Wars universe at this point: bridges. Stay away from a bridge because lightsabers don't hurt you. If you're a good guy, laser blasts don't hurt you. But the bridge, man, you really, especially if you're a dude, stay off the bridges. Don't even go near one.
So I'll say, if they can keep these things to 30 minutes. And keep the spirit of adventure in there, I see a lot of hope for this series. But unfortunately, I think they're going to go back to a couple hour-long ones here and there. And maybe just think about it. If you like doing these, maybe just consider going ahead and going back to animation. It's okay.
Jonas, let me put you on the spot here. Numerical rating, what would you give it?
Numerical rating? Oh,
yeah.
I hate that.
I know you don't like it. You've told me before you don't like doing this. So I thought
I'm gonna give it a 7. But I do have a question for Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the migratory patterns of Purgles,
which, by the way,
African
surely
or European,
all the folks in all the folks in the galaxy have got to be Purgle enthusiasts.
As soon as I said migratory patterns, I knew that I thought Pro was going to take that one from me there. But yeah, African or European.
So I do want to get into a couple of things that I didn't like about the show, and I feel kind of bad that
is it space boots?
I was going to mention, well, okay, I still don't like Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera. I just don't like her. And I thought that the whole scene with her and the senators was just awful. For one, I couldn't see Hera behaving that way. And she's not embodying Hera for me at all. The other was Ahsoka going out on a spacewalk on the ship and taking one out with a lightsaber. I think a scene like that can work. They have done spacewalk scenes in Knights of the Old Republic that I thought worked really well, but here it just looked cheap. It didn't.
Wait a minute,
good.
Lauren. Are you saying that you found it flawed that the baddies would see someone out there on the wing of the ship and say, hey, instead of shooting the ship that can't go anywhere and would surely kill the person, let's shoot the little person with the glowy sticks, and let's get close enough that the glowy sticks can hit us.
By the way, did she get those back in the end, or are they off floating in space now?
Oh, she's got them. You're not going to lose those lightsabers. That's marketing right there.
They're force tethered.
One thing I forgot to mention, though, which I think is a huge positive for the show, which I'm always lax in bringing this up because I get caught up talking about the story. I don't often mention the music. The music for this show, I think, is really good. I think it's some of the best music that they've had in any of their shows. So I think it's got that going for it.
Agreed.
Yes, it did feel like Star Wars music, which is really saying something. They got they got the composer for Rebels to do this. So
it's Kevin Kline, that's the wrong name.
That's Pirates of Penzance and Fish Called Wanda. Kevin Kline. He's
it's a wrong name.
I did read something about the actual composer. I forget his name now, but if you're watching this or somebody wants to get back to him, you did a great job.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's some of the best music that we've heard.
Well, Lauren, if you had to give this a numerical rating, where would you put it?
I think I'm right where Jonas is. It's probably about a 6 or a 7. I'm still kind of reticent to give it anything bigger than that. You know, I'm still very skeptical of the show, but was very pleasantly surprised that I didn't hate this one, and I kind of did the first 2. So,
yeah, I think I'll give it a 6 out of 10, and I think the first 2 were significantly lower, maybe a 3 or a 2 out of 10. But this is a 6, and I think that it. Had the series opened with this one, I would feel more optimistic about the chances of Dave Filoni in this series. As is, this thing came limping out badly, and we'll see if it can garner that fan base. It's getting more and more difficult as Star Wars fans seem to be more and more apathetic or completely hesitant to return at all to Disney, a la Lauren, your situation, and I suppose the situation that I and Jonas would both have if we were not glued to our seats or bolted to our seats by this audience who say, you must watch, you must review. But that's what we do, and we love it. Lauren, last thoughts.
I do want to make a couple of predictions, which, first of all, and this may be a risky one, this is the one that I'm less confident about, and that is that I'm not sure we're going to see a whole lot of Thrawn in this series. I think they may save him for the last episode or 2. Yep. I'm not sure that he's really going to do much here. The other one, though, and this, I think we probably have to tip our hat to Doomcock, because I think it was him that had the rumors out there. I think for people that are interested in this show, you need to pay attention to the rumors about Skeleton Crew, because I can see Ahsoka diving straight into that. I think the rumors that Doomcock had about Skeleton Crew are lining up perfectly with what we're seeing here, and I think it points to the strategy of Lucasfilm and Star Wars going forward.
You know, Lauren, I was worried that you were going to predict that Anakin was going to show up at some point, and I was, that's pretty safe, I would say, at this point. Jonas, any last thoughts on this one?
No. I'm curious to see if they can maintain at least this level of quality to where it's inoffensive and at least something, then I won't mind. They unfortunately are probably going to do another 1-hour episode somewhere in here. Oh, by the way, Jason appearing in the episode, that was good. I don't know if that was a note from somebody where they're like, no, we got to show the kid. We got to go show the kid now. That's the funny thing about these. They can edit them pretty much on the fly. So, yep, that's my only thought. Glad to see them use that name, even if it's attached to the wrong character.
So, gentlemen, it seems to me that we opened up covering the chaos that is the Disney ratings situation, the war between Disney and the ratings aggregators out there. I think that's just beginning. We'll see what happens with Nielsen. But following that, it sounds to me like, folks, put this down on your notes. I think we just did a positive review of a Star Wars piece of content. Did we just do a positive review?
Yeah, I think we did.
I would put the Star Wars in quotes though, because
Okay.
so I'm not going to go a little dark, but yes, it's positive-ish.
Okay, well, let's hold on to this. Let's enjoy it. It's not great. It's not even necessarily, strongly good, but this was a positive review. We will enjoy it. We will savor it because, as we all suspect with Lucasfilm, next week could be very, very different. So we'll hang on to this one as long as we can. But folks, if you enjoyed this review, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. The conversation has come to a close, but the commentary begins. It is time. Let loose. Do you think we are now officially Disney shills? Are we white pills? Are we
Phil Brown?
Have we crossed the other side? Are we on the side of the corporations now? Let us know down in the comments below. We try to call it as best we can, balls and strikes here on the Pro channel. And it's just that Disney very seldomly gives us anything that we can do this with. But, this was a 6 or a 7, so we'll ride it. All right, folks, find these fantastic folks on their YouTube channels and on those locations that you can find them. Their descriptions, their links are in the video description down below. And folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Clickbait, fraud, drama queen. Ugh, I wish there was a channel that was 5 to 6 minute news reads without the drama, frauds, and clickbait that could accurately let me know the current news, providing my crucial context utilizing all the different That Park Place contributors and creators.
Well, stupid, there is. It's the That Park Place YouTube channel, which will be going live real soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you can really stick it to the algorithms.
You're joking.
Nope.